90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Welcome to another edition of From the Press Box on this Monday, August 10th, 2020. My name is Rob Leonard. Joining me is my co-host and my brother, award-winning sports writer Tim Leonard. Hello, brother. How you doing?
Morning, brother. Doing outstanding. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Let's start off with the big story right now. It's the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders have made, could continue on, let's say, I guess is the best way to say what they're doing. And they're going to be playing the Washington Capitals.
The evil Washington Capitals.
Yes, they are evil. I remember when they used to be not so evil because they weren't really good. But Barry Trotz will be playing his home team, or his former team, I should say, in the playoffs. This is going to be I'm sure he'll downplay it, but I think this is pretty important.
I agree on both.
Yeah, so, he's pretty, you see him in those press conferences. He's pretty, he's okay. He doesn't get, though one time I heard him mention Section 329, the noisy section of what was the Coliseum. So
we don't have to worry about that. Well, now it's the noise. Now it's the noise-free section of Toronto. Yeah, I noticed on the NHL games that they don't play up the noise as much as they do maybe on the baseball games. I noticed that. The noise in the baseball games is fake. So.
No, I know that, and they do it with the hockey too. But I noticed that the baseballs is just a little bit louder. And they actually, if the home team scores a run, they raise it louder, just a little bit more. Or maybe it's just the team doing it themselves. I don't know, but I have noticed. If you're going to have a fake crowd, well, make it as noisy as possible.
Well, I mean the whole issue that is going on with that is, it's I don't know, it's. The whole thing that they're doing with Toronto is there's no home team,
right?
So what's who are you going to play up the crowd noise to?
I don't know.
That's the point. That's the point. That you can't. You're not going to favor one team over another as far as crowd noise goes. In theory, you could do it for the home team, but why even bother? It's a neutral site, so leave it neutral.
Right, I guess that's the reason. But
yes,
but maybe not, brother. Maybe the NHL has a different standard than Major League Baseball. Who knows? So
couldn't tell you. Don't know.
So the first game for the Islanders Capitals is Wednesday at 3 p.m. It's just so unusual watching sports like this, but you know what? It's so different that it's actually a lot of fun because how many playoff games we're always like, okay, we're going to have to wait, 2 or 3 days depending on the contract with NBC where we're going to be put. It's also August, not June or May. And as much as I want to get it over with, it's going to be nice to have a game on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, I remember when the Islanders won Game 6 in 1980. That was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, instead of having it at night, they had it a day because, they were getting playoff coverage on television too. So it's going to be nice that, these games are going to be all over the place time-wise. And game 1 starts 3 p.m. Wednesday. I believe it's on NBC and SN, right?
That would be correct, brother.
Yeah. And actually all the NBC owned and operated networks have been showing hockey, which is, it reminds me almost of like Olympic coverage that NBC does. They throw everything everywhere, and it's nice. Right? These channels need programming, so they're just happy as hell to have anything. And the fact that it's playoff games for the NHL is not a bad thing. I mean, it's actually very cool actually. So what do you think? What do you think of the Islanders' chances, brother? What do you think? What's your?
I think I'm judging by how well they played in this play-in round or whatever we're calling it.
Right.
I'm not sure the NHL knows what they're calling it, but the Islanders looked good. They looked like a team that hadn't been off for 3 months and, had really didn't have that long break. They looked good. The offense was cohesive. The defense was probably even better than it had been when this. I mean, if you remember with the Islanders when the season was interrupted, they weren't playing very well. The defense, especially, I thought was the primary reason. The Islanders really weren't doing such a good job of preventing goals, and they had seemed to have gotten away from the success or the formula that they were successful with a couple seasons ago. Barry Trotz's first year. The limiting defense. Basically, a couple of years ago, for most of the season, if the Islanders got 3 goals, the game was over. And in I don't even want to call it the second half of this season because I don't even really want to frame it in that way. But if basically, I think pretty much after Christmas, the defense wasn't that same team. And against the Florida Panthers in this series after they returned the best of 5 series, that's the Islander team we saw again. It was, when they got in the lead, that lead was protected. And the Panthers weren't given, they weren't given a bad goal. And the Islanders weren't the team making mistakes. It was, it was again that when they would get the lead, the defense would choke the life out of it. And that was good to see. I mean, that was the team that I was hoping we would see when the season came back, and that's against the Florida Panthers anyway. That's the team that we saw. I mean, you look at it, the first 2 games, 2-1 and 4-2. Those are Islander wins. That's what we've come. Yeah. That's what we've come to expect under Barry Trotz. Not a lot of goals, but they made sure they got more goals than the other team did. And when you allow 1 and 2 goals in the first 2 games, you're going to win both of those games. So, that was, and in game 3 was kind of a clunker, and you almost kind of expect it because most teams aren't going to roll over. You came back, or the team came back. You're not just going to roll over in a 3rd game and say, oh, all right, well, we put all this work in after the season came back and we got into this bubble and we just came here to play 3 games. So the Panthers came back. The season was on the line. They played well. The Islanders didn't play so well. And then game 4 came around and the Islanders took control of it and did what they had to do. And they won that 4th game going away 5-1. So, here onward and here comes the Washington Capitals. And this should be a fun series because obviously the Capitals can score goals. And obviously they know Barry Trotz and Barry Trotz knows them. I mean, this is a team that won the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago. With Barry Trotz at the helm. So they're not far removed from that success. And, I'm sure, I know that Barry Trotz would want to beat his former team. He's never going to say it, but he wants to. I mean, if he doesn't, then the season's over. So of course he wants to win.
I know our cousin Andrew will be rooting for the Capitals. Boo to him. But one thing I heard Barry Trotz say in the press conference the other day, I forget which day it was, but he was talking about his goaltending situation. And he said he could throw a dart at the board for either one of them, and it's going to work out fine. And it has been. I mean, they've been letting 1 goal get by as defense and as goaltender. So that was an interesting statement because, the Islanders have always, for many years, have always had 2 good goaltenders. Billy Smith dominated, but usually the other goaltender was pretty good with Billy.
Yeah, for sure.
Rolly Mendelson, Melanson, I should say. Yeah. Chico Resch, of course, along the way. So, it was nice to hear that about your goalies and just the situation because, the way playoff hockey works, the goaltender gets hot, he's staying in. And it was nice of him to say, well, I can pick either one. It doesn't really matter because they're going to both play really well. So I thought that was a good statement. And I agree with you, brother. The Islanders are playing much better than they did around Christmas time, where it seemed like everything just fell apart for this team that it started pretty well, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, what's going on here? So, to me, that's a good situation for them. I think they're going to beat up on the Capitals, and one thing I have to like about what's going on with the NHL. What?
Nobody's going to beat up on the Capitals. The Capitals are a really good team. If the Islanders win this series, it's going to be a very hard fought victory. So
I know, but
let's not just dismiss the Washington Capitals like they're just another team. They are a very good team. They're a very explosive team. They have a phenomenal goaltender in Louis Holtby. Varlamov played all 4 games for the Islanders in goal and looked like I said, looked good except for that one game that nobody really looked good in Game 3.
Right.
But he played well. But the Washington Capitals it's a big step up in talent. So let's not get arrogant.
I'm not being arrogant and cocky. That's not what Islander fans are. Come on.
Like I said, brother, let's not. Come on. It's absurd to. First of all, we still need to find out what's going on with Johnny Boychuk. He took a cheap shot in Game 1. He's in concussion protocol. Shoulder to the jaw. I mean, it was just a total cheap shot. I don't know what the refs were looking at when they only gave a minor penalty for that. But Boychuk didn't. He played. That was it. He played basically not even a period and a half of the first game and hasn't played since. So he is a guy who the Islanders definitely need to be in the lineup and be 100%. And obviously if he's not 100%, the likelihood is he won't play because once he gets through the concussion protocol, he's gonna have to get back to skating, get back into shape a little bit. So that was losing a guy like that, losing one of your veteran leaders and one of your top defensemen it was a tough thing, but it was something else that the Islanders had to overcome, and they did. So I'd like to see Boychuk be back on the ice, and especially against the Washington Capitals offense, because that's one of the best offenses in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, you need Boychuk in there. He's the main guy right now on this team. Barzell, him, and he's one of the guys. Let's talk about college football, brother. Oh, one more thing before I leave this topic.
Yeah.
It seems the bubble concept is working very well for the NHL, and I guess even the NBA. Because they can control the players. I mean, I don't mean that people will hear the word control and they freak out, but they have created an environment and have the players who were for the most part committed to it. I mean, there was a baseball pitcher for the Indians the other day who was actually sent back from I think it was from Chicago back to Cleveland because he broke the protocol. He apparently went out to a bar in Chicago while the Indians are in Chicago playing the White Sox, and the team sent him back to Cleveland, and he had to drive a rental car to get there. So it wasn't like we'll fly you there. It's like, dude, hey, go get yourself a car, drive your dumb self back to Cleveland, and whatever. We're not going to fly you there because you did a stupid thing. I mean. And this was a guy who talked about, we have to make sacrifices. There's actually a quote from him, before the season started about being committed to the whole thing. And he's the guy who winds up, breaking. And this is after, and we're going to talk about this later, but, breaking the whole protocol that Major League Baseball is struggling with right now. I mean, you have some teams that haven't even played 10 games yet. Because the Cardinals and the Marlins, were the first team with many COVID cases, and now the Cardinals are going through the same thing. They've only played 5 games so far, but
with the NHL and the NBA, they have been able to go down to Disney, and even though it's in Florida and the virus is spreading all over the place still down there, they've managed to create an environment where, for the most part anyway, the players are committing to the separation from their families and friends, and have been able to get their season at least played, and the NBA is going to be starting their playoffs this week. The NHL, as far as I know, haven't had any positive cases since everything started. Otherwise, something would have had to stop or gotten shut down. Sure. But this is what, when you have players and staff and everybody else who's committed to making this work, that's what you need. You need everybody committed, because all it takes is one person to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go out and go get a beer, or I'm just going to go out and hang out. Or you can't. You just absolutely can't do that. You can't put your own temporary enjoyment ahead of the entire league, because that's the decision that you're making, even though it doesn't seem like that. And it's well, it's just one day, or it's just one couple drinks or whatever. It's when you make that decision, you're actually jeopardizing the entire league. And
I agree, and I think also, you expect the baseball players, after the big fight they had to just get a season, you think they would just say, okay, we only have 60 games. I don't need to go to the bar today. Will someone bring me a 6-pack or something? Just something along those lines, because I think with all of sports right now, the main thing is to get through this season and worry about next season down the road. And hopefully maybe there's a vaccine or some sort of protocol to get rid of this. And I think that's all they care about right now. I don't think they care about anything else. And that's all they should care about, is just getting through the season. You don't want the season to be all of a sudden canceled. Well, too many people have COVID-19 and we're just going to cancel. You don't want that, especially after how it's been playing out. And I mean, the NHL and the NBA, their season was mostly done anyway. So the playoffs is, where they make their money. That's when NBC, SN, and NBC come in and say, okay, we're going to show all the playoff games. So that's where they make their money. So
right.
It's part that and part just let's get through this. They can always start the season late next year or later. There's ways of getting around this right now for next season. But I think they just want to get through what's going on right now. And, the players should realize that, When I heard about the Cardinals...
I think they do. I mean, but go ahead.
Well, when I heard about the Cardinals, I mean, come on, guys. What are you, stupid?
And that was right after the Marlins.
Right,
you have the example of the Marlins right there for you, and it still happens like that. And that to me, I mean, that's something that let's face it, that jeopardizes the Cardinals season in more ways than one. I mean, first of all, from a health standpoint, obviously you don't want. Right now, the Cardinals have I think it's 10 players who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. The latest one was yesterday, an outfielder by the name of Lane Thomas.
Right.
He became the 10th. This is something that the Cardinals thus far have played 5 games. All right. The Yankees, for example, have played 16. And there are some teams that have played 17. So you're looking at the Cardinals now are going to have to make up 11 games as of today. So when do you do it? When do you do it when you're looking at a schedule to begin with that was supposed to be 60 games in 67 days, which is a pretty, it was the schedule to begin with for baseball had very little off time and there was very little margin for error. And both the Marlins and the Cardinals have now put themselves in a situation where they're going to have to play several of these 7-inning doubleheaders that I can't stand. But now they're going to really have to from a pitching standpoint, produce depth that probably neither team has. The Cardinals are more likely to have that kind of depth than the Marlins will. But like I said, if they're going to have to make up, as of today, the Cardinals 5 games, so 12 games. So how do you make that up now? Because now they've already been off for more than 7 days. So you're talking about maybe having 1 day off the rest of the season.
Right.
And so you're going to be playing every day. You're going to have to play a lot of doubleheaders, and that's going to impact your winning percentage. And in a season where there's only 60 games to begin with, you didn't want to do anything to jeopardize your winning percentage, because that's obviously, you needed to have a good start to the season, and you needed to produce wins as quickly as possible. So this,
brother, I have a question concerning why are they not doing like daytime, nighttime doubleheaders like they do when they make up a game? Why would they just go to 7 innings? That's not really fair to other teams.
The day-night doubleheader concept is only there because it allows them to produce 2 separate gates.
Right.
So
yeah, I know that, but there's no gates. So
yeah, but that's why they don't do a day-night, because it just keeps the players at the ballpark for that many more hours. So with the 2 7-inning games, fine. You play a game, you have a half an hour between games, and then you start another game.
Yeah, but that's not really fair. How many games, over the years have ended at the bottom of the 9th because there was a comeback?
I'm not a fan of the 7-inning games. It's not traditional baseball. It's not you're toying with something that has been this way for since baseball started. 9-inning games. Right. Baseball is 9 innings. So let's face it. This whole season is let's just call it non-traditional. I'll be kind.
Yeah, starting a player on second base and the extra innings.
The whole thing. There's a lot of stuff going on that's been experimental with this season, and a lot of people aren't even bothering with this season from a fan standpoint, because it's a friend of mine asked on Twitter yesterday. He said, how many of you are actually taking this season seriously? And you know what? A lot of people aren't. A lot of people have just written off the baseball season and said, you know what? I can't watch this. I don't like what they're doing. I think what they're doing is absurd, and it's such an obvious money grab to get whatever they can out of this season, that you know what? I'm not going to bother with it, because I'm not going to invest my time and my energy for something that either A, I don't think is going to be able to finish, because somewhere along the way they're going to have to shut down because they're going to have an outbreak of COVID, or that with all of the changes in the rules that baseball has made just to try to produce something resembling a season, that it just doesn't feel like actual baseball. So that's
but you know something, the players who win the World Series ring and get that extra bonus money, they're going to be very much enjoying it, and I think
absolutely.
And I think if, let's say they had canceled the season, let's say we're not going to try, or we're not going to do it, I think that would have stained baseball again like it did in '94. So I think they just didn't want that. Even if you get a weird season like this season we have now, I think I'd rather have a weird season. I'm watching the games. I'd rather have a weird season. I
think a lot of people are watching the games because there wasn't, for 3 months plus there wasn't anything to watch. Right. I think and enough people are still in lockdown, and we've dealt with this in New York. I think we're between New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, I think we're different than almost every area of the country, because we had to deal with this from the very earliest stages. Right. And we I don't want to say we've gotten through it, because obviously, there are still people with cases, and there are still people dying from it, but not nearly. There was a 3-day span where New York City had 0 deaths last week. That's phenomenal. Right. That's great. And it shows that if you're responsible, and if you do what you're supposed to do as far as social distancing and wearing masks and being conscious of that this is an effort that an entire society needs to make, and not just 80% of people or whoever feels like it or whatever. That's what can be accomplished. But as far as the entire sport, like what we were talking about before, I just think that people were so starved for anything, and now everything is back. We got hockey really ramping up for the playoffs, basketball.
Well, Timmy, on Saturday, literally, I was going through the channels, and every channel, every major channel had a sports thing on. You had golf on channel 2, you had baseball going, you had basketball going. It was nice to see. You had hockey going. It was so, especially in the summer, you having hockey. I mean, that's, to me, is actually pretty good.
Yeah, but there's a certain,
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, there's a certain normalcy that has returned. But again, I mean, we're sitting here in New York and New Jersey, Connecticut, and metropolitan area, having for the most part gotten through this and emerged on the other side. But then you have to remember that it's still a big issue in Texas and Florida, and it's growing still in Ohio because some of the idiots who were there just refused to. It's really has become a symbol for a lack of leadership where this COVID-19 is continuing to expand. I mean, Ohio, I have a friend of mine who works outside of Cleveland, and his Board of Education voted to have in-class school, despite that, the Ohio State, whatever version of the CDC has said that in classroom school wasn't recommended. They said, well, we're just going to ignore what science says and we're going to have school. And it's like, how do you do that? How is that so irresponsible and science denying that you just ignore what the scientists say? And again, that's what I keep coming back to the sports part of it. They're embracing the science and they're saying, all right, what can we do to make this as safe as possible? We know it's not going to be 100% safe. And especially that goes for baseball and football, because basketball and hockey have created this bubble. And as long as they can keep the players in the bubble, then yes, it is safe, because if they have no positive tests, then they're safe. And they're doing everything they can. And the commitment from the players is keeping that bubble safe. But, I mean, when you have the society that is coming back and just rejecting the science, it just shows that it's like I said, it's just a complete lack of leadership. And
yeah, I want to see what's happening, in South Dakota. Was it this past weekend or maybe it's
the
Sturgis
bikers,
motorcycle thing is happening, and
that's going to be tough to. That's going to be tough. I'll just throw this in real quick. That's going to be tough to track because most of the people, in fact, the overwhelming majority, 95% plus, don't live there. So how do you track it? Because there's everybody coming from all over the country. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of cases, hundreds of cases that are going to result from that.
Everyone talks about, sometimes you see things. Well, the brave South Dakota governor, she's standing up for rights. Well, you know what? New York State has 19 million people. South Dakota has 880,000 people. It's a much different state. We have more people in Nassau County than they have in their entire state.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
they should be able to limit the spread just based on the fact that they have so few people that
right.
For the most part, they're spread out.
They have more bison there. I think Ted Turner, that's Montana, I guess. But it's not a state like New York.
So no, because people aren't on top of it. I mean, even like Rapid City is probably the most populous city, and it still is. It wouldn't even be a mid-sized city in New York.
Not even close. You're listening to 90.3 WHPC. From the Press Box is on your radio or your listening device. This show becomes a podcast later on Spreaker.com, among other places. So if you want to hear it again or if you miss it or whatever, our podcast is available. We are part of the WHPC Sports Talk family. Monday through Friday, Sports Talk 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Every Tuesday, 10 p.m. to midnight, there's another edition of Sports Talk. And, of course, we're from the Press Box, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Monday right here on 90.3 WHPC. Brother, I've come up with something for the New York Yankees. I want to pass this to you and get your opinion.
Can't wait, brother. Can't wait.
You know how you had the Core Four? You had that nickname, and the Core Four, the Core Four. Well,
it was a snappy nickname.
It was. Even though poor Bernie Williams was never really part of it, was he?
Exactly. No, he was, but he wasn't acknowledged.
Well, he was there first. That's why.
Yes, he was.
I want to throw this out there, brother, because you're a Yankee fan. I want to say that I want Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez, and Gleyber Torres.
Gleyber.
I call him Gleyber. I want them to be called. I want them to be called G3.
Okay, why?
Because they're the big shots on the Yankees. And Aaron Judge is there too, but
Aaron Judge.
But he doesn't have a G in his name, he does, but it's not his first name.
Okay.
So I want those three guys to be known as G3.
Is there a reason for that, or just
I just came up with it.
You notice that their names all start with G.
That's how it starts, brother.
Okay.
So
if you say so, brother.
I
don't know. I don't know how successful you're going to be with getting this off the ground, but we'll see.
Okay, it was just my idea, brother. Anyway, the Yankees are 10-6 right now.
Yes, they are.
They should. I think they should be actually a little bit more than 10-6.
Yeah,
but
by the way, brother, you go with G4 if you want to throw Garrett Cole in there.
Well, he just started. He's
Well, hey, and you could put Gio Urshela. He's another one. So you could have G5. Maybe we can get this up to what is it? What is it now? G7 or G8 or whatever. I don't know.
G7.
Yeah, so G7. We got to keep Russia out of there.
Yeah, we do.
So maybe we'll see. We'll see if we can get 7 Gs. You throw Gardy in there too, I guess. Gardy.
Okay, well, it's just an idea, brother. That's how
we'll work this up, brother.
This is how T-shirts get made.
Exactly.
Anyway, the Yankees are 10-6 so far, and they've been playing well, but I expect them to be just a little more ahead of 10-6.
Well, they were. They've actually lost 4 of their last 5 games, so they were 9-2 at one point. So
now they're 10-6.
Yeah. So it's let's face it. The Yankees didn't fare very well in Tampa Bay. They lost a couple of close games. Just didn't play very well. A 1-0 loss for the Yankees against Tampa Bay. That was disgraceful. I mean, this is probably the best offensive team in the league, and if you permit 1 run, that should be thank you very much for the win, and we're going home. So I don't know. Just a lot of things didn't happen the way they've been happening for the Yankees against Tampa Bay, and we'll see what's going on. They have. Pretty sure they're off today, and then they play tomorrow. They start a series with Atlanta. Which, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. The Braves are playing well. They have 11 wins thus far. But then the Yankees will come back and play a 4-game series against the Boston Red Sox. And, we know what happened with the 4-game series with the Red Sox a week or so ago in Boston. That was a 4-game sweep for the Yankees. So we'll see what happens there. And then Tampa Bay, and then the Mets. So it's all East Coast. It just seems like you see the same teams up and down the schedule. But that's what pandemic baseball is. It's actually going to be weird because the Yankees and the Mets are going to play 6 games in 8 days. They have a 3-game series at the Mets, and then there's 2 games against the Braves, and then 3 more games at Yankee Stadium against the Mets. So the Yankees will be impacting the Mets season very much in those 8 games.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's that's going to be a major 8 games right there for the Mets, because the Braves, as the Yankees beat up on the Braves, that's good for the Mets. And the
Mets need the help right now too.
Well, they definitely need the help. I feel bad for the new Mets manager, brother, because
he's got idiot fans.
Because how many games has he been managing so far?
The Mets have played 16 games thus far. They are currently 7-9, and I couldn't believe, brother, what I was reading on Twitter the other. And this wasn't even today. This was a couple of days ago. This was 14 games into the season. Incredible and stupid as it might sound, there actually are Met fans out there who are questioning manager Luis Rojas and suggesting that it's getting late early. Those were the words that I saw. Getting late early for the first year Mets manager. Now, you remember back in the day, brother, when George Steinbrenner fired Yogi Berra after 13 games. And the outrage. Maybe it was 16. All right, but it's ridiculous this early in the season. And for a guy who's never been a major league manager, and I mean, Met fans were laughing at the Yankees. Oh, well, it's crazy. It's a zoo. And now Met fans, it's absolutely absurd to me. All right, it's not Luis Rojas' fault that Pete Alonso all of a sudden can't hit. Right?
No, he can't.
Pete Alonso's batting average after 16 games is 197. He has all of 2 home runs in 16 games.
That's not the guy from last year.
That's not Luis Rojas' fault. It's not Luis Rojas' fault that Ahmed Rosario is batting 226. And it's also not his fault that Robinson Cano is currently on the injured list, although that probably is about as shocking as Giancarlo Stanton being on the injured list, which is not to say not at all. And it's also not Luis Rojas' fault that the Mets rotation, let's face it, is mediocre at best at this point.
Yep.
You're talking David Peterson. And for those Met fans who don't know, he is a rookie pitcher for your club that a lot of Met fans probably never even heard of. He is your second best starter at this point. All right. Steven Matz has been, except for one game, has been trash. And Michael Wacha and Rick Porcello have basically been what I expected them to be, which is garbage. Their ERAs are way over 5 or 6. And I'm sorry, that's dreadful. And Wacha went on the injured list on Sunday, so now your rotation is even weaker. There's no Syndergaard, there's no Stroman, Wheeler is gone. How do the Met fans expect this team to be as competitive or as good as they were last year when 3/5 of your rotation isn't there?
No, I agree, brother. I mean, I'm I'm a Met fan, and I've been very forgiving of Rojas because you have to be. It's too damn early, and this, like we talked before, this season almost doesn't count. It does count, but it's like you can't judge your manager on 60 games unless he's just a total incompetent, and he's not. So you have to stick with him and just figure out what's going on. I mean, if you want to say let's get rid of Brody, well, I might agree with that more than getting rid of Luis. So
let's face it, managers have to learn how to manage. And Brett Boone's first season with the Yankees wasn't a rousing success.
Aaron Boone.
What did I say?
Brett.
Oh, I get the Brett was a star on my rotisserie team.
But
Aaron Boone, his first season, there were problems, and learning how to manage is the same as in the major leagues. It's the same as learning how to play. There will be growing pains. You're talking about guys who haven't done a job before, and let's face it, Luis Rojas wasn't expecting to be the manager of the Mets. The only reason he got the job in the first place is because Carlos Beltran got caught up in this Houston Astros sign stealing saga, and was hired and fired fired before he'd ever managed a game. So Rojas was late to the party here, for Met fans to be so critical of this guy, he wasn't expecting to be the manager. So now he is, and now you're only giving him 14 games to establish himself with no hitting from Pete Alonso or Ahmed Rosario, two of your supposedly best hitters, and with a starting rotation that is flat out trash, and a bullpen that hasn't gotten the job done. So what's he supposed to do?
Diaz is
Diaz pitched well yesterday. I mean, he got through an inning.
You get a little tight. Your stomach gets a little tight every time Diaz comes in.
Well, but that's Rojas made the move to take Diaz out of the closer role. Seth Lugo was the closer. He got his third save yesterday. But Diaz came in the eighth, and he did strike out the side, but he also gave up 2 hits. So it was what did we call that, brother? We call that a Jurice Familia inning. Yeah, I don't know. What do Met fans call that? Where your guy strikes out the side, but it gives you a heart attack along the way. I don't know.
Johnny Franco, I think.
Either way, I mean, Johnny Franco was probably a little better, but he used to like to put a guy or two on base as well. But
I always thought that Johnny needed that to like fight back. I think
get his adrenaline going a little bit.
Yeah. So, let's go Mets. I mean, they're over 500, so I mean.
No, they're not. They're 7-9, bro. They're under 500.
7-9. I looked at it reversed.
That's all right.
But 7-9 isn't that bad. I mean, it's a short season, but we'll see what happens.
But I mean, you have to remember. This is what I keep telling people. When I saw the Yankees were 10-5, and I was like, okay, that's good. 10-5 is 667. You're winning 2 out of 3 games. I have no problem with that. That's nice. But you also remember at 10-5, a quarter of your season is gone.
That's right.
It seems like it's nothing. 15 games in baseball basically is nothing, but that's a quarter of your season. So when I looked at it and I saw 10-5, I'm like, well, you know what? The Yankees are on pace to win 40 games. I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Of course you would.
Because 40 wins is getting you into the playoffs, no doubt about it. In fact, 40 wins probably be the best record in the league.
I think the way to look at the season, brother, is Labor Day weekend. Who's going to be in first? And I think that's usually by Labor Day, if you were in first place, you were going to win the division. Not always, but usually. But this year, it's I think you can really blow it away, really, at this point. So, that's going to be fun to know. Let's talk about college football, brother, because college football is such a moneymaker for the rest of the sports teams in the NCAA that if there's no season, this could affect many other sports financially. I know a lot of people like women's field hockey. Our sister does. But they don't get their money from people showing up in the crowd. Nothing against it. They get their money because of stuff like college football and college basketball. And they're not even talking about college basketball right now, and they probably shouldn't. But college football, a lot of people are starting to complain, the players themselves. But at the same time, if the players, if they don't play this year, how does the NFL draft them next year? If they're seniors.
Well, there's also talk. Cause, I mean, let's face it. You know that the NCAA doesn't want to give up college football. They're talking right now about the possibility of playing football in the spring, as opposed, and this way it buys them time.
That'd be a great idea.
The commissioners of the Power 5 conferences actually met yesterday, and basically the discussion was very simple: is what do we do with this season, and how are we going to get through this when several of our regions are in crisis mode? I mean, it's still in crisis mode in Texas. The virus isn't going anywhere. Florida, the same way. That state has been hard hit. And like I said before, Ohio right now is one of the hot spots in the country where the virus is exploding. So those are 3 of your major college football hubs in this country.
Right.
So what do you do? And the commissioners, they didn't come up with anything, but I read something on Twitter, and I wasn't able to verify this, so I'm I'll just say that the Wisconsin State Journal, I believe said that the Big Ten has already decided not to play football this season. Now that's not confirmed, so I don't want to, put too much credence on it. But if that's the case, then with the power, I think probably what they were meeting about is, if we're going to make this decision, we all should make it at the same time, because who wants to be last to that party? Who wants to be the division that says, well, we still think we can play, and instead of looking at the obvious, information that they have in front of them, you don't want to be the last conference to say, well, we're going to postpone. So they would probably want to try to make that decision as close together as possible.
Brother, the other thing, and I just thought about this, the college players are also students. It's like you can't lock them in a bubble because they have to go to school.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. First. Technically, they're students first.
Right. But that's an inherent part of the problem. And I don't mean that to sound like them being students is a bad thing, because obviously it's not. But they're in that student community. And right now, most colleges that I've heard about anyway are going to the virtual learning. So everybody's going to be in their dorm and on their computer or at home on their computer, and there won't be that much interaction with students. But at the same time, you can't. You're not going to be able to lock away college students the way you can do that with NBA and NHL players, and to a lesser extent with baseball players, because they're going to be on campus because they have to practice. So when you're on campus, there's going to be interaction with people, and that interaction is what helps spread the virus. Right. Now, I will say that Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence was all over Twitter yesterday talking about how he wants to play this season, and he claims that the players are better off playing games than they would be if they returned home. Now, there is some merit to what he says, and I'll put it this way, that the one thing that he said is that the players a lot of players would be better off, and obviously we're talking about players from impoverished backgrounds, that they would be better staying on campus, and if they do catch COVID, that the expenses involved in fighting it off would be borne by the school,
right?
Instead of families. And I tend to agree with him on that, but I also think that they would be more susceptible to catching it on campus because of all of those interactions, and now you're playing against a teammate, and you got bodies coming together, and there's no way of social distancing, and I'm still not sure how they've handled the whole attempt at wearing masks and whatnot. I don't think players are doing that. Maybe some are, but I haven't seen the solution to that yet. So I get what Trevor Lawrence is coming from, but if you look at Rutgers, for example, our fine Big Ten representative from New Jersey, and yes, I say fine sarcastically because they're terrible, but they've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 cases of COVID-19 on their football team.
Right.
That tells you that once this thing gets into a team, it's going to go. It's going to go through a team, and there's nothing you can really do to stop it. Except stop practicing. And how many teams are going to do that? How many teams can afford to do that?
Right. And the other side of the coin, though, brother, is, and I'm walking away from football for a second, all the other sports are going to have to probably not have games either if football is going to walk away first. Which there's a lot of other sports.
What sports do you mean?
Well, field hockey, men's gymnastics.
Oh, they're talking about all fall sports. If you don't play football, you're not playing any sports.
Right, but that affects other people's.
Of course. So, like you said, the income from football and basketball is what drives athletic departments, and that's why you have athletic directors and school presidents, they want football. They want football to be played as much as possible. and I mean, a lot of players are looking at it as, well, these guys just don't care about us because they want to play. They desperately want to play. But like I said, they're thinking now about the possibility of doing football in the spring. So let's face it, there's no big spring sport. Although that's, you're talking about March Madness, and that goes into early April. So,
right, but I can see March Madness becoming April Madness or even May Madness because depending on who our next president is, they might have a little more drive to get things going to cure COVID-19 or at least to care about it. You might March Madness. I know it's a trademark thing.
Yeah, but they can fix that. They can still call it March Madness in April.
Well, they can call it that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did because that's that's their trademark. That's their ownership. No one else can be March Madness except for basketball, college basketball. Right. As you once wrote an article about it years ago. The Frozen Four, and they have to call it that instead of instead of the Final Four. Anyway, brother, we also should mention that the Nets are in the playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets. If we get the Knicks aren't even playing. They didn't even play.
Yeah, no, because they're terrible.
Yeah, but I felt bad for if you were going for records or something, or had some sort of contract like that, you can add on to it. But I understand. I mean, they have to, I guess, cut it off at certain points. But the Nets are in the playoffs, which is good for the Nets. We'll see what happens with them. It's the Nets are always been the quieter team in New York because they are not the Knicks. Even if the Knicks are bad, people will talk about how bad the Knicks are than how good the Nets are. So I thought that would change more when they moved to Brooklyn, but it really hasn't. So anyway, well, good luck to the Nets. And like I said, NBA and NHL, and I guess the WNBA, they're going to be playing in the bubble too. In a way, that's the way to do it. We'll see what happens with the NFL because I think they just keep praying that it goes away, the COVID, like our president says it will.
Well, I mean,
it'll just go away one day.
Yeah, but that's what the NCAA is doing right now. If they decide, which I think they're going to say, you know what, we can't play football in the fall, but let's see if we can play in the spring. They're buying time, and that's all you can do right now.
And that's what
just try to buy some time.
That's what every league has been doing. They want to have a season, whether it's short or not. I could see the NCAA doing a 6-game season. Just to say they had one.
Well, some leagues have talked about the possibility of just playing league opponents.
Right,
which is great for the Power 5 conferences. It's terrible for Notre Dame because they're not in a conference, but they might play an ACC schedule. But it's all speculative at this point because nobody knows what they're going to do because the whole thing revolves around, when can we get past the COVID safely, and when can we play games and practice for games with the expectation that we're not going to start an outbreak on our team. And that's where we need to get. And that's until that happens, then everything is just guesswork.
Let's talk about the MLS, brother, because we are a soccer-friendly show. The Portland Timbers will be playing the Orlando FC, another club that can't come up with a name, for the finals, so to speak, for the
MLS is back tournament. Yes, brother.
Yes, and I have to say
that game is Tuesday night on ESPN.
I have to say I've really liked what MLS did with having 2 or 3 games on the same day. I really enjoyed it. They played a lot. There was a lot less days off in between. Obviously, there were no international games. It was just focus on MLS, which I think was very important for MLS because sometimes they think they're this bigger league than they are. But I think for this year, getting rid of those international games and not, it starts in March and goes all the way to the end of November. Well, to me, that's way too long for a soccer schedule.
Yes, you've said this many times.
but now that they've seen it, and there's a way to do it. Not that they're going to do a 1 month season, but I like what they've done where there's a focus. The focus is on MLS, not about everything else. So
yeah, I'll disagree with one thing that you said there. I don't think MLS thinks it's a bigger league than it is. I think they like to maybe.
Yes, they do.
I think they like to try to portray themselves that way because they're trying to drive public opinion. But I believe me. I know enough about this league, bro. I covered this league for how many years? I know how they think. I believe me. I know how they think.
In level of arrogance, it's the NFL always number one. I think MLS would be number two. So just because they always say, well, soccer's the international sport. Everyone watches soccer all over the world.
Could not disagree more. So, could not disagree more. But anyway.
We got 1 minute, brother. We got 1 minute.
The final of the tournament is tomorrow night. And then MLS is going to start resume its regular season in home markets with the first game is going to be August 12th. So, I mean, August 12th is Tuesday. Or no, Wednesday.
Right,
I'm sorry.
right.
So, it's good to see MLS getting back and resuming its schedule. But again, we're going to have to see what happens. They were able to do it in England with the Premier League, but we'll have to see. Again, players need to be responsible, and we'll see if that's going to happen with the MLS players.
Anyway, brother, that just about does it for another edition of From the Press Box. My name is Rob Leonard. Joining me, of course, is my brother and award-winning sports writer, Tim Leonard. And we have actually no more time, brother. I was going to ask you one more question, but we'll end it here. We thank Sean Novad for keeping us on the air, and we'll see you next Monday with more From the Press Box, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Take two. For Monday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 90.3 WHPC.